The New York Rangers are still undefeated in the Stanley Cup playoffs as Dallas hold off the Avalanche. Plus, we look at the other remaining playoff series, Utah's team name vote, and more, all on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. I'm here each and every Friday with Gil Martin of Locked On Islanders. You can find us over on YouTube. We're on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. There's no I in team, but there is one in Indeed, and that's the hiring platform you need to build yours. Start hiring now with this $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire, you need Indeed. How's it going this Friday, Gil?
It's going. We're in the thick of round two now. All the series are underway, and still a great time of year to be a hockey fan.
Absolutely. Last Friday on the show, we were lamenting that there weren't enough overtime games in the playoffs, and we did. We certainly have gotten our fair share over the past week or so, and the latest of which was Game 3 of the New York Rangers versus Carolina Hurricanes. And man, that was, if you're a Hurricanes fan, that has got to be brutal. That overtime winner in Game 3.
Yeah, that one had to hurt. And boy, Arturi Panarin having a big series, his fourth goal of the playoffs, and came quickly. But boy, for the Hurricanes, there's a team that outshot the Rangers 47-25, but could not get the puck past Igor Shesterkin more than twice, and now they're down 3-0, and it's desperation time in Carolina.
It is, and I think that with two overtime losses in a row for Carolina, of course, the consternation begins. Last week, we were talking about the Leafs in this conversation, and now people are starting to make the Leafs versus Canes conversation. And are these both teams that are just never going to break through, even though they seem like they should? And what is wrong here? And I feel like it's very different between these two teams. I think that, and something we've talked about before is I think there's a little bit of ownership interference in Carolina that with certain contracts that may be their Achilles heel. I think, in Toronto is a little different. It's like the pressure there and the machinations. It just becomes overcomplicated, in my opinion. That is the issue in Toronto, that everything is so hyper analyzed there that they can't just be a team and get it done.
Well, there's more pressure. I mean, when you're on a team that hasn't been to a Stanley Cup final in 57 years and hasn't won in 57 years, there's a little more pressure. You're in the biggest market in Canada. And I think the way the two teams are constructed is also different. I think Toronto is more of a top-heavy team as compared to Carolina, which, the way the Hurricanes are built is more like a playoff team all year round. And you now have to think about Rod Brindamore's future in Carolina, which we know is up in the air if they lose this series, and it'll take a rare occurrence for them to win it. Is Rod Brindamore back? What does that mean for the franchise? Because he has been so successful in the regular season. A lot of questions out there right now for the Carolina Hurricanes, and it has got to be very frustrating for them because they outplayed the Rangers for long portions of that game last night.
Yes, they did.
At home, and they could not pull off the win.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also brings up, for the Rangers side of things, a really interesting Conn Smythe related question that, late in the second round or mid to late second round is when you start having those conversations. And right now, I think it's pretty neck and neck on that team between Artemi Panarin and Igor Shesterkin.
Yeah, and it's always great for a team to have that balance where you have your goalie and your one of your scorers both being in consideration for the Conn Smythe. It means you've got a certain amount of balance on your team, and that is one of the reasons why they're 7-0 right now in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's just it's pretty astounding to watch because this is a team that not only has the skill, but they just seem to have the team cohesiveness that nothing is phasing them at this point. They could probably be down 2, 3 goals in a game and still feel confident that they could pull it off and win.
Yeah, the confidence has got to be high. You almost don't want to make it too easy because you don't want this team to get overconfident, and that's really going to be on the coaching staff to sort of rein them in and say, "Hey, you still got to grind it out. You still have to go out there and get the job done. It's not as easy as it looks."
It is not. Meanwhile, the Colorado Avalanche and Dallas Stars had game 2 with Dallas holding off the Avs in a later game comeback attempt here after going up pretty big in that game. And like, what do you think was the key to Dallas holding them off and winning this one?
More than anything, I think it was probably desperation after
Yeah.
what happened in game one. So
Yep.
you don't want that deja vu to happen to you after game one. I give the Stars credit for holding on and getting the job done, and they needed that game. They could not afford to go down 2-0 and then have to head back to Denver for the next couple of games. So the Dallas Stars, it would have been a disaster for them to lose that game. And Jake Ottinger got just enough done late in that game to hold them on, to hold on rather, and get the W.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting with most of the remaining teams, if you're looking at a potential Conn Smythe winner, it's the goalie is the
Yeah.
first guy you go to. For Dallas, that has not been the case here. I think they are the one, well, I guess like the Oilers too, but we'll get into that in the
Yes.
next segment.
Yes. But
But
what? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, I'm just, is there a player that stands out on this Dallas team right now, or is this truly a team effort here?
I think it's a little of both. I mean, Rupe Hintz had 4
Yeah.
points last night, so he certainly stood out in that game. But I don't know if there's any one player on Dallas right now who, to me, would be head and shoulders above any other to be Conn Smythe winner. But again, it's still early in the process.
Yeah, I think so. On the Avalanche side of things, for me right now, it's Kale McCarr.
Yeah, yeah, Makar has looked very good, and he always looks very good. So, no surprise that he would be one of the best, if not the best players on his team.
Yeah, I think, of course, the other option is Nathan McKinnon, but I think it's pretty close between those two guys on Colorado right now. If you had to pick one from that team, so you look at the Rangers Carolina series game 4, which could win it all for the Rangers, is on Saturday, as is game 3 for the Dallas Colorado series. That's the late game. Any predictions there?
I think Carolina stays alive for one more game. I think the Rangers will not be perfect through 2 rounds, but I don't think it'll be easy, and we may see another overtime game. The games have been close for the most part, even though 3 games to none. Something that Rod Brindamore certainly said, and I think when the series goes back to Colorado, I think the Avalanche will take a 2-1 lead in their series.
I think so too. I think those home games are going to be huge for Colorado. As much as I would like to see Dallas come out of this series, but I do think that Colorado has figured it out this playoff. And I think they made the right additions at trade deadline and all of that. But we'll see how those series go. In the meantime, we have two other series that will be continuing their games tonight, and we will talk about them coming up next. We all know how important life insurance is, but it can be overwhelming trying to find the right policy on your own. Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same day approval and avoid those unnecessary medical exams. I know it feels so much better to have insurance and not have to worry about my family being covered. Your work life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs, and even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. And Policy Genius gives you unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonnhl or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonnhl. All right, looking at the other series, we've got Boston versus Florida tied at 1, where both games were kind of dominated, one by each team. And, we're shipping up to Boston, as they say, for games 3 and 4. Do you think that will have an effect on these next two games?
I think it will, but I think these two teams are so tight and evenly matched that, like we saw a split down in Florida, I wouldn't be surprised if they split again in Boston. I fully expect this series to go 6 or probably even 7 games just because it's a great rivalry. These teams are so close in so many ways, and both teams have great goaltending. So I see this series. I see a split in Boston after the split in South Florida.
Yeah, that's what's so fascinating to me is this goalie battle here,
Yeah.
because both Bobrovsky and Swayman have had incredible performances, but when they're not on their game, they're really not on their game. And it's they just have these tendencies to have really good or really bad games in both directions, but both of them are playing generally very well this playoff season so far. I think, obviously one of the other big difference makers here for Florida is Alexander Barkov. I think he's been a huge contributing factor here. But I think, on the Bruins side, it's been a little bit more of a team effort. Like, I think that, of course, you have your standout stars there, but I think this has been a real, like, top to bottom effort in the playoffs so far.
It has been, and I think depth is really one of the strengths of the Boston Bruins at this point. That
Yeah.
and playoff experience. But look, Florida has a lot of playoff experience too. They were in the finals just a year ago. So I just love how evenly matched these two teams are.
Yeah, I think that's what's making it the most fun for me, watching these games, is that I truly have no concept of which versions of these teams are gonna show up. And, I think that especially, Florida on the rush is just something that is so much fun to watch, as they head up the ice, and both teams have a bunch of speed. Both teams have physicality at the same time. And, in a playoff scenario, when the refs tend to put their whistles away a little bit,
Hmm.
the intensity of this series has been a lot of fun so far.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And the rivalry is intense, the talent level is high, the stakes are high. This has all the markings of a great series.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. Looking at the Canucks versus the Oilers, Vancouver leads 1-0 at this point, and it's the late game tonight for game two. And I think Edmonton going into this series may be a little overconfident.
Hmm.
And I think that's kind of what led to that loss in game one with that incredible comeback with a couple of goals in less than a minute there for them to go ahead and ultimately win the game for the Canucks. What do you think about Edmonton's strategy going into this series?
Yeah, I mean, overconfident may very well be a good description, but to sleep on Vancouver, even without Thatcher Demko in the lineup, is a big mistake. And I think that you just can't be uh, overconfident in the playoffs, especially after the first round, where uh, some of the players who, some of the teams rather, who just sort of squeaked in are now eliminated. So Vancouver's been good all year. Yeah, they've had a few slumps over time, but the Oilers, I think for them, it's got to be a wake up call that we had this game. We should have won this game. We let it slip away, and you kind of blew a chance to set the tone of the series, to steal home ice advantage. Now game two becomes even more important for the Oilers, and I would think that any overconfidence that they may have had going into the series had to be wiped out by that comeback win.
Oh, absolutely. And, even just going back to the regular season where Vancouver won all of the games against the Oilers,
Right.
just looking at how the Oilers performed late in the season as well as in round one of the playoffs, they still came in, I think, a little overconfident. But it's just one of those things where Rick Tocchet has figured out a way to coach this team to wins, and I think he's so good at getting the right matchups.
He is, and that's where home ice advantage becomes even bigger, and that's why blowing that opportunity looms even larger, against Edmonton, and game two becomes even bigger.
Yeah, it does, and I think that, you know, the Oilers at home have been a mixed bag, uh, over the past several years, and I don't know what it is, but, it's been interesting to observe, but, the other thing is that, when you have the talent that the Oilers do, they should absolutely be winning that game too.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of, to me, a character uh, test for the Edmonton Oilers. You blew game one, but you should have probably won it. You have this opportunity in game two. How do you respond? How do you bounce back? Do you let that, blown lead devastate you and it bleeds into game two, or do you get more determined and come out and reproduce that fast start that you had, but keep your foot on the gas? That really becomes the issue, and it's a character test for the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, absolutely. But, with Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Zach Hyman, who is tied with Nishushkin for most goals in the playoffs this season thus far, I think that, are the guys that have to step up.
Yeah, well, look, the old cliche in the playoffs is your best players have to be your best players if you're going to go on that long playoff run. And yeah, those are the guys that have to step up, because those are the key players. Look, you need your supporting cast. Don't get me wrong, but it's a lot easier for the supporting cast to follow the lead of your top players than the other way around.
So, looking at potential Conn Smythe winners from these two series, we've talked about that play tonight. Anybody stand out for you on Boston or Florida or the Canucks or the Oilers?
I would still be goalie oriented with Boston and Florida. I think Bobrovsky and Swayman would be the leading
Hmm.
candidates on their respective teams. What about you? What do you think?
I mean, Connor McDavid obviously stands
Yeah.
out as the potential Conn Smythe winner. I mean, That is so shocking to say, I know. But I do think Swayman is the obvious choice on the Bruins side of things there. I think, it would take a lot for somebody else to come out from under those guys in particular. But yeah, we shall see again. Boston versus Florida, the early game on TNT in the US, and then Vancouver and Edmonton, the late game tonight. I cannot wait. It is going to be a good night of hockey. In the meantime, the Utah team, with a name still to be determined, have released a vote this week on what fans think the team name should be, plus a new potential 3-on-3 league. We're going to talk about that coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. There is no I in team, but there is one in Indeed, and that's the hiring platform you need to build yours. When you're hiring, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. With Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed Data US. So join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked-on. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/locked-on. Indeed.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
So earlier this week, the Utah team in the NHL released a vote of 20 names for their potential team and confirmed that the team will just wear Utah jerseys for their first season, in order to have time for this to play out and do all the design work that needs to be done, and all of that. And I think it's a really interesting process here. But what's your take on them not having a nickname at all?
It's a little disappointing. I mean, I understand wanting to get it right and to do all the marketing that you need to do and get the team design. There wasn't a lot of time. I get it. But at the same time, it's going to be a little strange having a team in the NHL with no nickname. So we'll see how it plays out. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, I would rather them do it right
Hmm.
than do it fast. I think in this instance. Now, you may doubt that by looking at some of the name options, and I totally get that. Um, so I think my issue here is that there's too many names on the
Yes.
list, and that if you go by the toddler theory of decision making, you only give people two options because otherwise it gets too complicated, right? Um,
20 is a lot. I mean, I would have gone
20
with
is a lot.
5, 6, 20
Even
is,
eight.
yeah, 20 is a lot. Let's put it that way. And some of these I think are just definitely not as good as some of the others.
That is correct. I think that like Caribou is kind of dumb because all I think about is the coffee company. Um, there's a lot of mountain, snow,
Yes.
cold kind of related names here. The one that upset me the most is the Black Diamonds. And I know that's a skiing reference, but that
Yeah.
was the name of my women's hockey club team in Salt Lake when I played there. And that would be really rude to steal that name from an already established, like more than a decade old women's hockey team in your city.
No,
But
you could look at it as an homage, but yes, I understand where you're
no, I think it's rude.
okay.
But other than that, most of them, blizzard, glaciers, ice, freeze, mountaineers, like
Yep.
There's a lot of, I think, lazy options here, but I am also like, I don't think it should be longer than 2 syllables because Utah is 2 syllables, and I don't want more than 4 syllables total,
Yeah.
is how
So
I feel
so in
about it.
that vein, Mountaineers is out.
Too many syllables,
Too
too
many
many
syllables.
syllables.
I don't like Yeti. I just don't associate
No,
Yeti with Utah.
not at
Um,
all, not
yeah,
at
that
all.
I mean, I think Yeti is there's a lot of cool logos you could go with that. I think Ice is kind of too generic.
Yeah,
Um, but there are some good choices out there. I think Squall would be different.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
that would be a little bit different. But we'll
And
we'll see.
having gotten caught in a squall in Utah,
There you
I
go.
can tell you it is
It's realistic.
absolutely it is realistic. I like Venom if you're gonna go, like, slightly out of the box and not, have something snow or ice related.
Right.
I like that a lot. Some people are really digging Outlaws. I don't know, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't feel right to me. But, I mean, if you wanna Google the Mountain Meadows Massacre and see why that might apply, go ahead and do that. But that being said, if you're gonna do something like bee related, I think Hive makes the most sense, with, the, state seal has a beehive on it, and it's the beehive state, so,
Right.
I get that, but
Although I
yeah,
think Swarm is more, it sounds more interesting to me than Hive.
that is true. That is absolutely
I'm
true.
going
So
with the
there's
B theme.
yeah. Yeah. So like if that's what theme you want to go with, that's fine. But yeah, there's not a ton of really good options here. There's just some solid options, I would say,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
my
Now, can you
opinion.
write
And
in? Can you submit a write-in candidate at this
no,
point?
this was
Hmm.
based on submissions that
Okay.
they created this list from, but there's going to be a vote and it's going to take a while. I think if they should get down to like a final 3
Yeah, that would probably be wise. And
and then
whatever.
attach artwork to it
Yes.
and then have
Yes.
another round of voting, in my opinion.
And whatever jersey that jersey this year that just says Utah, probably going to be a rare collector's item. So get yours today.
Yeah, absolutely. Or whenever they go on sale.
Right. Right.
In other news, there is supposedly going to be a new 3-on-3 league coming to North America. There was one this past year called like 3 Ice or something like that, that was pretty small and not a lot of people talked about it. But this is fascinating because this is going to have 16 teams, 14 players with 12 skaters and 2 goalies on each team, like spread all around the US and Canada. I think it's, one of these things where if you try and isolate one aspect of hockey and make it its own thing, like, is that enough?
Yeah. I I am not a huge fan of 3-on-3 overtime. I think it can be exciting for 5 minutes or less, but to me, I would rather see a hockey game decided with the same rules the whole game. And the problem I have with 3-on-3 is it takes a lot of the physical element out of the game. To me, part of the excitement of hockey is that the skilled players have to overcome the physicality of the game in order to do what they do best and earn it. And if you take that element out of the game, which a 3-on-3, just because of the size of the rink, it's going to, you know, minimize the physicality. I think something will be missing. I don't know. It would remind me of sort of like playing the All-Star game for 60 minutes. And that doesn't really hold my interest the same way as a five on
Yeah.
five game.
Well, especially if you have like retired players or older players as your marquee guys who are slower than they
Yeah.
used to be. Like, is it going to be as exciting as NHL 3-on-3 overtime? Probably not. The only way I think this would work for me is if they do it on a smaller rink, like a cross
Hmm.
ice size rink.
Yeah.
And can they do that logistically? I
don't
don't
know.
know.
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know either. But yeah, I am dubious of this
We'll see.
endeavor.
We'll see. I am
Yeah. Yep.
dubious as well, but I'm willing to at least give it a look see if and when it gets
Yep.
off the ground.
Yep. All right. That will do it for today's show. We will be back next Friday dissecting the week that was in the NHL playoffs. Gil will be back on Monday talking to a few hosts from around the Locked On NHL network on what their teams have been up to during the playoffs. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's now also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available in the free Fire TV channels app. Have a great weekend, everyone.